On our planet, there are places so extreme and wild that living in temperatures below 50 degrees below zero is normal, to the point that some mothers let their babies sleep on the street to make them stronger, and where at the same time people bathe without clothes, whipping themselves with branches in the hope of improving their health. Get ready to learn more about Oymyakon, a small village lost in the frozen Siberian desert that has been recognized as the coldest and most remote inhabited place on the planet. A frozen region that contains one of the most extreme and dangerous roads on Earth. A village where children go to school at 50 degrees Celsius below zero. Cell phone batteries only survive minutes outdoors, and people cannot turn off their cars in winter because the fuel freezes in seconds. A lethal environment that causes ice crystals to form around the mouth when breathing, creating winds that can cut through the skin, a reality that is even reflected in their customs, with legendary beings they worship in the hope of calming the extreme cold. Don't miss this new video from Uncensored World to learn about Oymyakon like you've never imagined before, discovering what life is like for people in a place where even cows live in heated barns. Let's get started. In the far northeast of Russia, where the vastness of the landscape seems to fade into mystery and solitude, lies Oymyakon, a village that challenges the limits of human endurance. This place, surrounded by tundra and perpetual ice, experiences such extreme cold that it could freeze your blood, an environment where daily life is constantly confronted with the harshness of nature. Located in the Sakha Republic in Siberia, Oymyakon is thousands of kilometers from the major Russian cities. From Moscow, it is necessary to travel more than 6,000 kilometers to the northeast, crossing frozen rivers, endless forests, and frozen steppes, to reach this enclave where survival requires endurance and adaptation. This village is surrounded by mountains and valleys that concentrate the freezing air, creating what scientists call a thermal pocket. In the harshest months of winter, the thermometer drops to figures that are unimaginable for most of humanity, and the wind that sweeps across the tundra cuts like sharp blades. Oymyakon has been awarded the title of coldest village on the planet due to historical temperature records. In 1933, an official temperature of -67.7 degrees Celsius, -93.9 degrees Fahrenheit, was recorded, considered the lowest ever measured in an inhabited place on Earth. During the winter, average temperatures hover around -48 degrees Celsius, -58 degrees Fahrenheit, figures that make this land a real challenge for human life. The name Oymyakon comes from a word in the local language, which literally means water that does not freeze. This curious name refers to the hot springs that emerge in the area, a rarity in a land covered by ice and snow for most of the year. Literally, the water in Oymyakon often remains liquid despite the extreme temperatures, offering a small respite from the relentless freezing that dominates the landscape. Although, as you will see, the inhabitants of Oymyakon are not always lucky enough to have water and other elements that do not freeze. Beyond the origin of the name Oymyakon, this place is known worldwide as the Pole of Cold because it is the most extreme inhabited point on the planet in terms of low temperatures. The term pole is used here figuratively, not literally. It is not near the North Pole, but represents an extreme or record-breaking place in a specific category, a pole, in this case of cold. The continuous freezing in Oymyakon has profound consequences for all aspects of life, as you will now see, constantly conditioning the lifestyle of its inhabitants. It not only conditions the lives of its people, architecture, transportation, and even food, but also funeral rites. Burying the deceased becomes an extremely complicated task, a challenge that local societies have learned to face over generations. The region's soil is dominated by permafrost, a layer of ground that remains frozen throughout the year, sometimes to depths of several meters. This rigid, frozen layer makes digging conventional graves nearly impossible without the use of heavy machinery. And even then, in many areas, even modern equipment is not enough to pierce the ground. Faced with this reality, the inhabitants of Oymyakon have developed alternative methods for dealing with their dead. For centuries, families have resorted to practical solutions, placing the deceased in garages, sheds, or basements until summer conditions allow for a safe and permanent burial. This method, although uncommon in the rest of the world, reflects human adaptation to an extreme environment. Temporary preservation of bodies in enclosed spaces prevents damage and maintains the dignity of the deceased until the ground can be worked safely. But the extreme winter in Oymyakon not only freezes the ground, but also the air. Every exhalation released outside is transformed into frost crystals in a matter of seconds, a phenomenon that turns breathing into a small spectacle of floating ice. The vapor from breathing freezes instantly due to the combination of extremely low temperatures and relative humidity in the air, forming tiny crystals that fall like snow dust around the mouth and nose. The effect is not limited to breath. Eyelashes, eyebrows, eyelashes, and any exposed hair begin to accumulate thin layers of ice after a few seconds in the open air. Even eyelashes can freeze completely in a matter of minutes, forming thin layers of frost that reflect the sunlight and look like tiny diamonds on the skin. Because of this, any metal objects in contact with the skin, such as rings, earrings, or glasses, can become real freezing traps, as they quickly conduct extreme cold to the body, causing pain and even frostbite in seconds. So if you are lucky enough to visit this village one day, we advise you to leave your rings or earrings at home. For all these reasons, every trip outside requires meticulous protection and careful planning, something that the inhabitants of Oymyakon have taken into account since the beginning of their lives, as you are about to discover. In Oymyakon, even the youngest children must learn to live with the extreme cold. Many parents in this village have the curious habit of leaving their babies outdoors for long periods, even in the middle of winter, as part of their daily routine. The babies, carefully wrapped in multiple layers of clothing, hats, blankets, and special sleeping bags, are often placed in strollers or mobile cribs outside businesses or homes while their parents shop, run errands, or simply take a break. Even though the thermometer may read -40 or even -50 degrees Celsius, the children sleep or rest peacefully outdoors, protected from the wind and with their limbs covered. This practice, more than just a habit, reflects a deeply rooted belief. Controlled exposure to the cold strengthens the immune system, increasing children's resistance to colds and respiratory diseases. In addition, this early contact with extreme weather is believed to prepare children to face the harshness of life in Oymyakon, teaching them from an early age to tolerate temperatures that would seem unbearable to any visitor. Interestingly, recent studies in Arctic regions have shown that moderate exposure to cold can increase blood circulation, improve thermal tolerance, and promote rest. In Oymyakon, this daily custom is an example of how cultural adaptation is closely linked to survival in one of the most extreme places on the planet. The region where Oymyakon is located belongs to the Republic of Sakha, better known as Yakutia, in northeastern Siberia. This vast expanse of tundra, coniferous forests, and mountains is dominated by permafrost, a layer of permanently frozen soil that makes the land virtually inaccessible for much of the year and has a significant impact on the way of life of its inhabitants. This extreme climate, combined with its remoteness from large cities, makes this region one of the most remote and extreme not only in Russia, but on the entire planet. Oymyakon is a living example of how geography shapes human life. Surrounded by mountains that trap the freezing air, the village is isolated from the rest of the world for long winter months. Temperatures can drop below -60 degrees Celsius, -92 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sun barely rises above the horizon during the darkest days, making the survival of its inhabitants dependent on preparation, ingenuity, and endurance. In these extreme latitudes, a unique phenomenon is experienced. The length of the day varies dramatically throughout the year. During the darkest months of winter in Oymyakon, on the shortest days, only 3 to 4 hours of daylight are recorded, plunging the village into almost constant darkness. This extreme phenomenon transforms each day into an additional challenge. Daily activities, transportation, and social life must adapt to the scarcity of light, In contrast, during the summer, Oymyakon is completely transformed. The sun remains above the horizon almost 24 hours a day, creating the famous phenomenon of the midnight sun. This constant light allows the short warm season to be used to the fullest, to grow food, repair infrastructure, and perform outdoor tasks that would be impossible in winter. This extreme contrast between winter darkness and summer brightness not only affects daily life, but also shapes the culture and habits of its inhabitants. The months of endless sunshine are filled with social activities and community work, while winter forces people to adapt to introspection, planning, and survival in the face of the planet's harshest climate. A striking curiosity that reflects the reality of this village is that in Oymyakon, people do not turn off their cars in winter because if they do, they will most likely never start again. Because of this, residents keep their engines running for hours, even while shopping or visiting. Fuel itself can crystallize at these temperatures. So many vehicles are parked in underground garages or covered with thermal blankets to keep them running. Water and plumbing are also a challenge, especially during winter for the people of Oymyakon. Due to the permafrost, there is no underground sewer system in Oymyakon. The ground remains frozen throughout the year, making it impossible to install underground pipes. Any attempt would result in the water freezing instantly. Therefore, houses use outdoor latrines, and residents must collect water directly from nearby rivers, which are frozen in the middle of winter. Once brought home, this water must be melted on the stove or in special containers in order to be used for cooking, hygiene, or cleaning. The few pipes that exist are installed above ground and protected with insulation to prevent them from freezing under the permafrost. Life in Oymyakon is also marked by the need to maintain heat and energy. The local diet focuses almost exclusively on meat, fat, and raw or lightly cooked fish, foods that provide concentrated calories and enough energy to withstand temperatures that can drop below -60 degrees Celsius. Stores are scarce and limited. Fresh produce is hard to come by, and most food comes from supplies brought in from larger towns or from local production. Livestock farming is also adapted to the extreme cold. Cows live in heated barns and are fed hay and, in some cases, dried fish, an energy source that helps them endure the long winters. Animals are essential not only for food, but also for the economic life and survival of the community. In terms of transportation, although all-terrain vehicles adapted to extreme cold are used today, husky dogs continue to play an important role in certain conditions, especially when roads are blocked by snow or ice. When necessary, sleds pulled by these dogs allow for the transport of cargo, supplies, or even people in situations where cars cannot operate safely, recalling a tradition that has accompanied the inhabitants of Siberia for centuries. If you are thinking of traveling through this region, whether in powerful off-road vehicles equipped for extreme temperatures or in fascinating husky-drawn sleds, now is the time to discover the Kolyma Highway, one of the most extreme and wildest roads on the planet. This legendary road crosses mountains, frozen rivers, and vast permafrost deserts, where the asphalt freezes and blizzards can bury vehicles in a matter of minutes. Built during the Soviet era, the Kolyma earned the nickname Road of Bones, due to the harsh conditions in which Gulag prisoners participated in its construction. Its macabre name comes from the history of its construction during the Soviet era. Gulag prisoners worked in inhumane conditions, without adequate tools, exposed to temperatures that could exceed 50 degrees Celsius below zero, lack of food, and disease. Many died in the attempt, and their bodies were buried near the road or directly under the asphalt, hence the nickname that still endures. Some accounts say that people were literally reduced to bones, and that the mortality rate during construction was extremely high. The Kolyma stretches over 1,200 kilometers, connecting Yakutsk, the capital of the Sakha Republic, with Magadan in the Russian Far East. Its route is a masterpiece of human endurance in the face of nature, with makeshift bridges over frozen rivers, stretches of frozen gravel, and landscapes where winter lasts most of the year. Traveling on this road means facing constant challenges. Vehicle engines can freeze. Tires must be special. There are curves with drops from cliffs hundreds of meters high. And any stop in the open air requires multiple layers of clothing and extreme protection. In Kolyma, every kilometer is a reminder of the power of nature in these latitudes. Accidents due to all this are not uncommon here. Every year there are numerous rollovers, falls from cliffs, and collisions on dangerous stretches. The road requires special tires, cold-resistant fuel, and above all, extreme driving experience. Life in this place is so extreme and unique that the cold has become part of the culture itself. In Oymyakon, the inhabitants revere Chiskan, known as the Lord of the Cold, a kind of Santa Claus of the polar winter. This mythical figure emerges from the Arctic Ocean with his icy breath, bringing with him the winds and temperatures that define the region. Depicted with horns and an ornate cape, Chiskan appears in ice sculptures and ceremonies during the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Locals offer gifts in the hope of softening the extreme cold and ensuring that the sunlight gradually returns, while tourists observe and participate in these festivities, connecting Siberian mythology with the harsh reality of living in the coldest inhabited place on the planet. And with a view to mitigating the extreme cold, clothing becomes a vital element for survival in Oymyakon, not only for its practical function, but also for its relationship to daily life and personal comfort. The inhabitants cover themselves with reindeer, fox, and horse skins, natural materials that retain heat even in extreme temperatures of -60 degrees Celsius. Synthetic clothing, on the other hand, becomes stiff and breaks easily due to these extreme temperatures, making traditional fabrics irreplaceable. Covering themselves with layers of clothing serves a purpose. Woolen undershirts and pants retain body heat, while outer jackets and pants made of fur protect against the biting wind and frostbite. Underwear is usually made of wool because here, the choice of undergarments can mean the difference between comfort and freezing. Interestingly, this clothing also affects intimacy and domestic life. Spending so much time wrapped up, warm, physical interaction at home takes place in a warm and protected environment, and the contrast with the extreme cold outside creates a kind of safe, intimate space where the skin can be temporarily exposed to the warmth of the home. Thinking about this change between cold and hot temperatures and intimate life, few people know that in Oymyakon there is a common practice among the few inhabitants of the village, which many tourists or travelers find controversial. One of the most pleasant and healthy customs for the inhabitants of this village, baths that are as relaxing as they are surprising, which we are now going to learn about in more detail. Banyas are traditional steam baths common throughout Russia, the country to which Oymyakon belongs. In them, people bathe naked or wrapped in a small towel, alternating between the intense heat of the steam and the extreme cold outside, which can include ice water, snow, or even dips in a nearby lake. This radical contrast not only cleanses and relaxes the body, but also strengthens circulation, increases resistance to cold, and has become an essential wellness ritual in a place where winter temperatures can drop below -60 degrees Celsius. It is common in some banyas, as is also the case in Oymyakon, for men and women to bathe together, although in most modern facilities, they are usually separated by gender. Either way, bathing without clothes has no intimate connotations, as it is something that is fully integrated into their society and culture. This custom of alternating heat and cold has therapeutic purposes, helping to strengthen the immune system and relax the muscles, as well as being a time for socializing and conviviality. One of the best-known practices of the banya, which surprises many, is the use of birch or oak branches, called venik, with which participants gently whip their skin, sometimes whipping each other, even between couples or families, something that really catches the attention of any foreign traveler or tourist. Far from being painful, this ritual stimulates circulation, clears the pores, and provides a feeling of deep well-being. To foreigners, this practice may seem surprising or even controversial. But for Russians, it is a centuries-old tradition that combines physical and emotional health in a safe and controlled space. Banyas began to become popular in Russia around the 11th century and were considered essential spaces for hygiene, as well as for social and ritual life. In the following centuries, they became places where meetings, talks, and, in some cases, community celebrations were held, which could be compared to the bacchanals of other ancient cultures, although always with a focus on cleanliness, relaxation, and community. Some ancient accounts mention that these gatherings included music, dancing, and light meals, creating an atmosphere of shared pleasure. Throughout history, banyas have also been spaces for practices, sometimes unusual, such as mud baths, medicinal herbs, or even meditation sessions and purification rituals. For Russians, the experience of sharing these banyas with others, whether friends, family, or co-workers, reflects a very particular aspect of Russian culture, the mixture of health, tradition, and sociability. With all this in mind, we would like to ask you, would you like to visit Oymyakon? Could you get used to the extreme cold, or do you prefer the heat? With whom and how would you like to share a banya? Pause the video and leave us your comment. Doing so is the best way to support Uncensored World and help us continue working to bring you the best content. So thank you. There are probably not many people willing to travel or spend time in a place where your breath crystallizes instantly and your eyelashes are covered with frost, a region where talking outdoors for several minutes can cause frostbite on your skin. In these extreme conditions, even technological devices suffer. Cell phone batteries freeze and stop working in a matter of minutes, and anyone attempting to remain outdoors without proper preparation would not last more than an hour. Despite this, Oymyakon attracts many adventurous tourists every year. Visitors come mainly to take photos next to the extreme thermometers in the village, probably the most extreme in the world, located in the central square, where the lowest temperatures on the planet in an inhabited settlement are recorded. In addition, tourists can enjoy natural hot springs, frozen tundra landscapes, and partially frozen rivers, and even participate in local experiences such as steam baths in banyas, sleigh rides, or visits to traditional Yakut dwellings. With that in mind, in a few minutes we will explain how you can get there and enjoy this extreme village to the fullest. But it is one thing to visit, and quite another to live permanently in this remote and wild settlement. Oymyakon has a small population of just 400 to 500 inhabitants, mostly descendants of the Yakuts, the ethnic group that has inhabited this region for centuries. These inhabitants learned to survive in extreme conditions thanks to reindeer, horse, and cattle herding adapted to the cold, hunting and fishing, and the construction of insulated and well-heated homes that can withstand ice and snow. Interestingly, many of these houses are designed with double wooden walls and layers of turf or earth, which act as natural insulation against the wind and extreme cold. Homes are traditionally heated with wood or coal stoves, which not only provide heat but are also used for cooking and melting snow for drinking water. The Yakut ethnic group that founded Oymyakon chose this location because of its access to hot springs and springs that do not freeze, and thus gave it its name, a vital resource in an environment where every element is essential for survival. For the inhabitants of Oymyakon, extreme cold is so normal that children attend school, even when the temperature drops to -50 degrees Celsius, -58 degrees Fahrenheit. Classes are only suspended if the thermometers drop below -55 degrees Celsius, -67 degrees Fahrenheit. Everyday life is full of unique challenges. Residents must melt snow for drinking water, maintain constant fires to heat homes and animals, and protect every part of their bodies from wind that can cut through skin. All these realities underscore the harshness of life in Oymyakon, a village where every walk, every outdoor task, and even the simple act of breathing could mean death if one is not prepared. If you've made it this far, you're probably interested in finding out how to get to the coldest village on the planet and enjoy this unique experience to the fullest. What few people know is that, despite its extreme isolation, it is possible to plan a trip to Oymyakon from America, Europe, or anywhere in Russia, as long as you are properly prepared. At Uncensored World, we have done the research and now bring you all the details so you can imagine and organize your own adventure to the Pole of Cold. From New York, for example, the most direct route involves taking a flight to Yakutsk, the capital of the Sakha Republic. With at least one stopover in Moscow, this journey can take around 18 hours, and round-trip ticket prices range from $1,300 to $1,800. Travelers must arrange a Russian visa in advance, and it is recommended to apply for it at least 2 months before the trip. If your starting point is Madrid, the trip is slightly longer, with flights of approximately 22 hours and prices ranging from $600 to $950. As with the United States, prior visa and planning are required. Once in Yakutsk, the real adventure begins. To reach Oymyakon, travelers can opt for the Kolyma Highway, one of the most remote and challenging routes in the world, covering approximately 680 kilometers in a trip lasting 14 to 16 hours, depending on weather conditions. Shared vehicles on this route cost between $100 and $150 per trip. Alternatively, it is possible to take a regional flight to Ustanera, the nearest town with an airport, at a cost of $200 to $300, from where the journey is completed by road or, in some cases, by sled, depending on terrain and weather conditions. For those who prefer comfort and organization, there are guided tours from Yakutsk, which include transportation, accommodation, and activities. These packages typically cost between $1,500 and $2,500 per person, depending on the duration and services included. Activities include visits to the Pole of Cold, sleigh rides, ice fishing, and cultural encounters with the Yakut people. Accommodation in Oymyakon is limited. There are guest houses and small family-run hostels, with rates ranging from $50 to $100 per night. Given the shortage of beds, it is essential to book at least 6 months in advance. Restaurants are scarce, and local supermarkets only offer basic products, so many travelers bring non-perishable food and bottled water. The village's infrastructure means that every detail of the trip requires preparation. Drinking water is obtained by melting snow or buying it bottled, and appropriate clothing, thermal clothing, insulated boots, gloves, scarves, and protective goggles, is essential to survive temperatures that drop to -60 degrees Celsius, -92 degrees Fahrenheit. Among the most interesting experiences for tourists is having their picture taken next to the most extreme thermometers on Earth and enjoying a Russian banya, alternating between intense heat and extreme cold. Another unique option here is to participate in the ancient tradition of ice fishing, where holes are drilled in the ice to catch local species. Ice fishing tours usually include a tent with a stove to shelter from the cold. The prices of these tours, departing from Yakutsk, vary depending on the operator and duration, but generally range from $1,900 to $3,100 per person, including transportation, guide, equipment, and meals. All these activities provide an understanding of the resilience and adaptation of the Yakuts, as well as the spectacular nature of a place where human life is pushed to its limits. A trip to Oymyakon usually lasts between 5 and 7 days, which is enough time to acclimatize and enjoy the activities without rushing. Although the village is remote, the Yakutia region receives approximately 250,000 tourists a year, many of whom include Oymyakon in their extreme itinerary. As you can see, planning ahead is essential when traveling to the coldest place on Earth. Being flexible in the face of climate change, respecting local traditions, and preparing for extreme conditions are the keys to enjoying this unique experience and surviving one of the wildest places on the planet. If you enjoyed discovering Oymyakon and its realities, don't forget to leave us a comment telling us what surprised you the most, and give us a like. You know that doing so is the best way to support Uncensored World and continuing to work to bring you interesting videos like this one every week. And don't miss the video that follows this one to continue enjoying the wonders, mysteries, and curiosities that make this beautiful planet called Earth unique. Click on it, you're going to enjoy it.